Well, the Dodge is eating through the wood faster than I can supply it, so I guess it's time that I take that engine's been sitting here on the stand for a couple months and get it dumped into this truck. So story on this one real quick. After I had the oil pressure issues and I gunked this motor really bad, I have lost some oil pressure, starting to burn some oil. The few times I have ran it on gasoline, I've noticed I'm getting gas past the rings and it's getting down into the oil. So this motor needs to come apart, and so I pulled it down to the shop here yesterday on the car trailer, pulled it down behind the Dodge, and we're gonna get this engine ripped out and get this one stuffed in it. I've already started loosening a couple things up. Probably just gonna time lapse through it and get this motor out of here. Now what you just watched in the time lapse for me was only 10 or 15 minutes. And I have the entire top of the motor stripped. All that's left at the end of that time lapse: headers, motor mount bolts, 2 bolts for the starter, 2 bolts for the slave cylinder, and the bell housing bolts, which in reality is another half an hour work on a normal vehicle. One of the many reasons I like old school V8s, so I like Chevys in particular, been around them long enough, I don't have to think about it. I can just start ripping and tearing and I know where everything is, I know where everything goes. It's been 8 years since I touched this engine when I put it in this truck. Other than my sludging issue when I had to pull the valve covers off and clean it out, haven't touched this thing. It's been nothing but fantastic. So yeah, that's one of the reasons I love working on this old school stuff. There was a time I wanted to put a fuel injected motor in this. That time has passed. I don't care about running Woodgas down through the top of a $700 Holley carburetor. Doesn't bother me. This does just fine. The only one thing I would change, if I ever rebuilt this truck completely, I would never have used these advanced adapter headers. There is one bolt, the back bolt on that side, which took me the last half an hour that I didn't have the camera turned on. One bolt. And it's only in the head 4 threads. Half an hour later, headers suck. Well, she's a hot, greasy mess. Well, not hot. I haven't started it since yesterday. But give you an idea how rich this thing was running, how much gasoline was making it past the rings. I drained the oil out of this engine probably 6 hours ago on my lunch break. There was so much gas fumes that when I threw together this little engine lifting plate real quick, there was a center hole right here. When I welded over the top of that hole, this engine lit up. It kicked over and it shot flames out both intake and exhaust. I had smoke rolling up through the distributor hole. I had smoke rolling out of the spark plug holes. This thing was fumed so bad, like I would not light a match next to the oil that came out of this thing. It stinks like fuel that bad. So whatever I did to this engine, she's not a happy camper. The rings are gone, but quick hone, new set of bearings, new set of rings, it'll be good to go. But for the time being, we're going to experiment with a much smaller camshaft. I am going to keep the 4-barrel intake manifold and the Holly that was on it. Don't really know where I'm going from there, other than, like I said, just basically an RV camshaft. Nothing special. Definitely going to keep my aluminum Corvette short snout water pump. I'm probably going to reuse this pan because I know this one clears the steering linkage. I don't know about the pan that came on that one, but I think this is going to get rolled outside and get a steam clean bath. It's pretty nasty in here, and I'm going to be spending some time tearing this one down, cleaning up the other one. Well, that motor's already pretty clean, but I want the truck cleaned up before the motor goes in. Hopefully. Definitely need to pull my, what is that, 158 or 168 tooth flywheel. I don't remember what that is. With the center force stage 2 clutch that goes to the Toyota transmission. I think while I have this apart, I might do a little bit of firewall clearancing. You can see I drilled a hole to get to that bell housing bolt. When I put this motor and training in here, I slid them in as a pair. I've never had to remove the engine. Top bell housing bolts, ooh man, I was getting mad. I mean, I was mad enough I knocked a hole in my floor to get to one of the bolts. So I think we're gonna get some percussive maintenance, maybe a little attitude adjustment from there's a 10-pound sledge sitting over there. This is gonna get fixed up because that sucked. But we'll get that massaged in place, get everything clean, and it'll be ready to stab in the Just as a quick follow-up, I know I've gotten some subscribers from one of my shorts on YouTube looking down the intake manifold of this particular engine. And that was at about 7,000 miles when I did that video. You can see, it really isn't much for carbon buildup. And there's probably, there's at least 10,000 miles of wood gas use on this engine now. And these runners actually look pretty good. Yeah, there's a little bit of buildup, and it's mostly sitting up on the roof of the head. Not really that big of a deal. I mean, other than now my hands stink like gas because all of this is soaked. I am a little bit bummed out I won't be able to, English is hard. I won't be able to use my roller rockers and my manly guides because these heads still have factory push-in studs. And this one, these heads have been worked over and they got bolt ends. That was a little bit of a bummer, but meh. Rockers are nice, especially with a little bit more ratio. But like I said, we're going back to a much smaller camshaft, so I don't want to screw up my testing by putting a higher ratio roller rocker on there. A couple things I wanted to mention. I remember I told you guys a while back I had picked up that 2-barrel intake manifold, and I was planning on going back to a 2-barrel on this. After my recent playing around with converting the carb that was on this engine over to basically a mechanical 4-barrel, I really like the power I'm getting out of it, so I'm going to stick with the 4-barrel. And one of the reasons for that, if you look at the bottom of this carburetor, this is the old one off this engine. You guys can notice it's got a little bit of corrosion. You know, 7,000 miles of wood gas use on poor quality aluminum, it's going to do that. Anyways, the amount of surface area that this thing is sucking fuel through. Now, I was just running this as a 2-barrel with this carburetor. Carb's on it now. I've modified the linkage, turned it into a mechanical 4-barrel. You can see that's a lot of space to be flowing gas through. Now, just as an example, size comparison wise, this is the throttle body off the V10 Dodge. Basically, these 2 barrels are not a whole lot bigger than 2 barrels on the Holly. So I kind of got some guessing of what I'm going to do later on down the road with the V10, but I don't think, in my opinion and from my experience, the power change that I got on the Toyota, making it breathe through all 4 barrels, the Dodge needs to breathe better than just this little tiny throttle body. I've got a lot of thoughts on it. I don't think I could put them all into a single video, and it's hard to understand, hard to explain the amount of power difference I felt running 4 barrels on this truck versus just running my Dodge on this. But there's going to be work that's done to the Dodge here pretty quick, pretty much as soon as I get this one back on the road, which, as it is right now, I need to pull it outside, wash it off. Now, once the motor's in, I need to break in the camshaft that's in that engine. Once that's done, I do have some repairs I need to do on the gas fire on the truck. My heat exchanger is made out of 18 gauge barrels. They're rotted out. I've already got holes in them that I've had to patch up. And when I was loading it onto the car trailer, I noticed I've also got a hole in my rear condensate tank, which is also 18 gauge. Just of my own preference at this point, any more gas fires I build, there will not be any more 18 gauge sheet metal. It's too thin, wears out too quickly. So those 2 things are going to get repaired, but first we need to get this engine tapped in. But see you guys hopefully real soon after I get this all cleaned up, and we'll get it put back together. Thanks for watching.